Welcome to the Wrestling Philosophy Show, where we discuss unique perspectives and beliefs on the sport of wrestling. Give us a follow or subscribe on various social media platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show.
It's time to start planning for next season's tournaments. Be sure you have Smitty's Corner Rugs on your mats to protect them and keep them clean. Get a hold of him directly at smitty43952@gmail.com. If you have a tournament, it's the way to go. It creates a custom coach's box so your tournament runs efficiently and keeps the mats clean since they use a top spray MRSA killer.
Man, best thing to do is drop me an email, smitty43952@gmail.com, or you can text me at 740-278-8016. And again, we got inventory, man, and get a quick turnaround time. And our rugs are all top sprayed with our MRSA staph killer that kills coronavirus as well, man. So, you know, we were already keeping it clean, keeping it classy before Corona. Now you really got to have a corner rug, right?
Coach Tom Marsh. Been trying to get you on here. Coach Jamie Yazarski said we needed to get you on, so I'm glad to get you on finally here. I know we had some issues last week, but I'm glad to have you on today. Got a lot of stories according to Coach Jamie, and I'm looking forward to hearing them today. So let's start off. Let's go all the way back. When did you get started in wrestling? You got a long line of experiences here, but when did you get started in wrestling?
I came home from military school to New Bern in 1962-63 school year.
Okay.
And I was a pretty good football player. And so I started on football as a sophomore every down. And when I was in military school, I'd been a basketball player, even though I was about 5'7". And so when the season was over, I was heading in to do basketball. And I'm leaning up against the wall in the gym, and I'm not dumb. And I looked out there and I said, man, there ain't no way I'm gonna make varsity here. And I just came off of varsity football. And I said, I might not start on those JVs. And I look over in the corner and there are these guys throwing each other around. Well, I always enjoyed that a lot. And so I walked on over and leaned up against the wall, and the head football coach was also the wrestling coach. Didn't know anything about wrestling. And I'm leaning up against the wall, and he says, good granny, son, you want to wrestle? And good granny was profanity for him. That's what he said when he got real mad. But anyway, I said, yeah. And I guess I was weighing 100, maybe 170. So he says, well, come on out here. And I go out there, and he brings this guy that weighed about 120 pounds. And he said, wrestle him. I said, come on, coach, give me somebody that ain't going to hurt. Well, you know the story. The 120 pounder beat me all over the mat. And so I was so frustrated and embarrassed kind of, that I think I probably went back next 4 or 5 days just to get a shot at him again, which never happened. But also that year, we had a kid named Floyd Rue, who later wrestled at Appalachian. He took second in the state his junior year because he was in such poor shape. Because he pinned everybody in North Carolina, in the eastern North Carolina. So he became my practice partner. And he beat me to death every day. And I attribute that. I learned as much as you could learn in New Bern at that time, just to save my life every day.
Right.
And truthfully, we look back on it, and we didn't do a lot of wrestling. We knew a half Nelson, but we didn't work on takedowns. Our practice consisted of 100 jumping jacks, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 20 laps, and then he'd put us out on the mat and he'd call 2 people out there to wrestle. We never got instruction on anything. We're real good at throwing people down, and if we got you down, we held you down. So I graduated. At that time in North Carolina, you only qualified for the state if you were first in your regional. Mm-hmm. They only carried 4 people. My senior year, they qualified 2. And I got beat in the finals of the regional in overtime. And so I was the only kid on the team that qualified to go to state. Well, my coach, we left to New Bern at about 3:30 in the morning, Friday morning, to wrestle in Boone. And if you understand, New Bern's on the coast and Boone is in the mountains. And we got snowed in at North Wilkesboro. So I never got to state tournament.
Oh, so you never got oh man.
Never got there. He wasn't the most fun to spend a weekend with, but anyway. So got through all of that. And I went to a couple of colleges and played around, didn't really pay any attention to what I was doing. I was really looking to have fun more than I was anything else. I wasn't worried about education. And so in the meantime, I met my wife, which was the first great thing that ever happened to me. As a matter of fact, September the 9th, we've been married 56 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's been a lot longer for her. Been a lot longer for her than it has been for me. But anyway, and so I decided I would go back to college. So I went to community college, and then I transferred to East Carolina. And we would go work out. A friend of mine and I would go work out every day. And we saw this guy, would come in and lean up against the wall, didn't think anything about it. And we worked out through that summer, and then we go into the fall. And I guess it was about October, we're in there, and he comes in, wrestling team walked in. So, we get our stuff together and walk out. And he's standing out in the hall, and he said, "You got a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What's your name?" I told him where I wrestled. He said, "Well, I think you could help us if you're interested." And I said, "I'm really interested." He said, "Why don't you come tomorrow?" I went home and told my wife. She told me I was crazy. Nothing new.
She already knew that, right?
I went to practice that next day, and I think it hadn't been a day since then. That was 1968. Hadn't been a day since then that I hadn't been involved in wrestling or thought about wrestling every day. And then I graduated, and I went to Jacksonville High School for 3 years, taught biology, and I was a PE major. And then I went back to graduate school and was an assistant in East Carolina. And then I left there and went to East Carteret High School and stayed for 3 years. Then I decided I was going to make some money. So I went to work with a trucking company. And I was there for 10 years, miserable every day, and always found some way to get to football and wrestling. And then we got moved in 79, I think. We got moved to Great Bridge, Virginia.
Okay.
And my oldest son wrestled at Great Bridge Middle School with a guy named Woody Coons. And of course, I got involved. I had a kids program at Great Bridge, Deep Creek, Indian River, and Western Branch that I ran. And I got involved at the middle school some. And the next year, my son was in high school, and he wrestled for a guy that wrestled with me at East Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Who is now deceased. His name's Cliff Bernard. Small world, Well, Cliff got out of it. He was a math teacher, so he got out of coaching, and in comes Wayne Martin.
Okay.
And I'd heard about the Martins, but I didn't know that much about them. Mm-hmm. And I went and asked him if he minded if I came to practice. He said, "No, come on." And I was still running the kids program, and I just fell in love with their system. I think that's when my philosophy really got developed. When I was at Jacksonville, I had my first state champion. We were pretty good, but we weren't great. When I went to East Card, it was the same thing, because I'd go to clinics and I'd pick up little bits, and then I'd come back and you put those little bits in, but you didn't have any trunk of the tree, kind of, just going off in a lot of directions. And, with Wayne, especially Wayne, he's the best technician I've ever seen. With him, everything came from the base of the tree, and his practices and the way they drilled. And you would say, let's say, we call it inside step, high crotch, whatever. Inside step, and you took them down, you would look for Turk. So every situation, you wouldn't just drill one time. In other words, if I was using a hook post, they call it, inside to a claw lift, I'd come right back with a Russian inside to a claw lift. So you always came back to where you were. You ended up in your Turk, you ended up in whatever. And it just made things so simple. And so I fell in love with it. And like I said, I watched it 2 years. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go back into teaching. And she said, well, what are you going to do for the difference in the money? And I said, I will paint houses. And to this day, I'm still painting houses, through everything that I've done.
But you're doing what you love, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fortunately, my health's good at 76. I can do about everything I want to do. So anyway, that's how I got in the Granby system. And then I got hired at Deep Creek High School, and I told, as a football coach and a middle school wrestling coach. But I told the principal, if I got a call from New Bern, my home, I was going. But I knew there were no openings because I talked to the superintendent that morning before I went to my interview there. So they offered me the job, and I was supposed to go to work the 15th of August. And I got a call about the 11th of August from New Bern, and the superintendent said, do you want to come to New Bern and be assistant football coach and head wrestling coach? I said, yeah. Call the guy, boom. That's how I got back to New Bern. And then the first year was, much more organized than I had it before, but not as organized as I would like it. So I went to Granby camp that summer, and then the next 23 years. And basically what I did was I copied Granby's system and had unbelievable success with it. And the thing that I like so much, you talk to a lot of coaches and they teach their lightweights one thing, their middleweights another thing, their heavyweights to other things.
Right.
In that Granby system, everybody did the same thing. And they said, well, your heavyweights can't do it. I had a 2-time heavyweight state champion that weighed 285 pounds. He was 6 foot tall. So he wasn't built like a Hulk. Now, he was strong as a Hulk, but he won 2 state championships with a sweep. Okay. So if you have an athlete, they can learn it. And you get so many repetitions in it. Now, there's some things heavyweights do different and better, and everybody will pick the things they're good at, but you can take an average kid and make him well above average in their system and their technique and the drilling process. And I always thought that I wasn't the smartest bear in the park, but anything you can teach, I can teach better. And that's really, I think, where our success came from. I took a lot of average kids because New Bern, the area of New Bern is not very big. It took a lot of average kids and won a lot of matches with them. And then I had some great kids along the way too. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how long were you at New Bern then?
I was at New Bern for 19 years. And then, in those 19 years, I think we won 14 conference championships, had 11, 12 state champions, runners up the carry a lot of times. A lot of people runner up the carries. And I had my last year, 2005 in New Bern, I had become assistant principal, and never thought I wanted to be a principal. But then I got an offer from Pamlico High School, and then at that age, I'm looking at retirement.
Right.
And my salary was going to go up, $25,000. So I went to Pamlico and got wrestling put in their junior high there, and I stayed there 3 years, and then I got a call from the superintendent in Craven County and said had some problems at New Bern High School they needed fixed. Wanted to know if I could do it, and I said yes. And so they hired me back at New Bern. So I went back to New Bern for 3 years. Then I retired in 2013. And the only time I haven't been directly involved in wrestling was the 3 years that I was at New Bern. That school was too big, and I couldn't get myself caught between the administration and wrestling.
Gotcha.
So when I retired in 2013, I went back as an assistant at the high school to Bo Lanchey, who is the head coach now, who wrestled for me. And Jamie had always assisted me at New Bern, but he was out in the private sector selling real estate and trying to get his own wrestling going. And so in 2017, this is funny, 2016, they hired a new coach. He was terrible. I mean, unbelievable. And they called me in the summer and said, "Are you going to come back and assist?" And I said, "Not if he's back." Mm-hmm. And they said, "Well, tell me why." I said, "I'm not getting into that. Call some parents. I don't want to get there." Mm-hmm. So they did. I get a call back next week, and they said, "Look, he's not going to be the coach next year. How much do you want to do?" I said, "I want to do it all." And they said, "Well, you can't do it like you used to do it. I still believe you got to push kids, keep them uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. If they're comfortable, they aren't learning." And so I said, "Well, we'll see, but I'll do it." So the first thing I did was I had a cookout for the team and a parent meeting. And I told the parents, I said, "Look, I do it different. Always done it different, but we've been successful." Mm-hmm. And I said, "What I need is cheerleaders. I don't need anybody teaching them wrestling. Mm-hmm. I need cheerleaders." And I said, so when the first 2.5, 3 weeks of practice, my practices lasted 3.5 hours, which is too long, I know, but I had a lot to teach. I said, "But what I need is when you pick them up in the car, I'd like for you to say, man, just think how much better you're getting than Jacksonville, than Havelock, than Washington. They're not practicing 2 hours a day." And not get in the car and say, "What is that crazy idiot doing practicing y'all 3 hours?" Mm-hmm. And I told them, if they'll just buy him, we'll be okay. We were 22-2 and third in the region, and carried 9 to the state.
Oh, wow.
So I think it points to the fact that if you sell the kids, you're going to be successful. Mm-hmm. Real quickly, let me tell you about my first year in New Bern.
Yeah, please do.
That was 85, 86. I walked into a situation. I was the 6th wrestling coach those seniors had had.
Oh,
6.
Geez.
That's one hand and one finger. And, I had to help them, but they had to help me. And I told them the first day in there, I said that 2 things are going to happen. I think Jamie told this story. I said 2 things are going to happen. I said, number one, you're going to win the conference, which at that time Laney had dominated for years. And the year before, I think we'd won 6 matches out of 18 or something like that. And I said, and we're also going to walk in on our hands and circle the mat at a first home match. And man, I could see the eyes rolling. And I'd gotten that from one of our science teachers whose son wrestled in New Jersey, and wherever they wrestled in New Jersey, she said the most impressive thing was those kids would come out and walk around the mat on their hands. So I said, well, if they can do it in New Jersey, we can surely do it at New Bern, North Carolina. So anyway, we started practicing, and I had something they wanted, and they had something I wanted. They wanted to win, you know, and they wanted somebody to believe in. And you know, I've always been good at that, but you're gonna have to pay for that belief. And so we started the year, and I worked them unmercifully. And we had our first match. It wasn't at home. It was in Washington. No, excuse me, I was wrong. It was Havelock. And we beat Havelock. And then the next match was at Washington, and Washington was ranked second in the state. They were 2A. We were 4A, but still second in the state. Very, very competitive. And, you know, we surely weren't supposed to beat them. And we went down there and we tied them. And which was like a win for the kids. So, you know, we were 1-1. And so the next match was home. And this was about 2 days before. We practiced every day walking on our hands, but it was a joke. You know, they were all laughing, joking. So the day before the match, I'm sitting in there. I said, look, guys, sat them all down. I said, look, I want you to understand this. We're going to walk in on our hands tomorrow night. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Now, you may fall, but remember, I'm going to be sitting in the chair on the sidelines. I'm not going to be the one looking like an idiot falling on the mat. Mm-hmm. So I said, you got a decision. You can walk on your hands. Not an athlete in here can't do it. You know, the heavyweight was the last one that came on, so he didn't have to walk but about 2, and then do a forward roll and be up and ready for the drills. And so I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to spend about 15 minutes now. Then when we finish practice, we're going to spend about 15 minutes. Then we'll come over here to the field house, because at that time we only had one mat. We had to walk it from the field house to the gym, probably 200 yards away, and then move it back after the match. One of those old heavy mats.
Oh, yeah.
So school gets out, we go out there and we practice about 15 minutes, get mad in, got everything set up. So now y'all can go back and practice, you know, on the concrete or just whatever, but you will be walking on your hands tonight. So got it all set up. It's time to start. We weigh them in. We go out there, and here comes my 103-pounder. Bam, up on his hands. 108, bam, all the way up to only 12 weight classes then. Every one of them, not a one of them fell. At that time, the 3-pounder walked all the way around the mat, and not a one of them fell. I mean, it looked like we had practiced it 1,000,000 times, and they got up and finished it, and that was it, you know. And we went on. I had 4 freshmen starting, and we wrestled in the last match with Laney to determine the conference championship. My 4 freshmen wrestled 4 of his seniors, and we tied 1 and won 3. And we beat Laney, won the conference championship. And so those kids believing, they wanted to win so bad, they believe a nut, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I needed them because I wanted to win so bad. And, you know, it's not all about winning, but it is. Mm-hmm. You know, you got kids that are down on themselves. You got to win for them to get some self-esteem. Just patting them on the back ain't going to get it done. Right. It's like giving everybody trophies. I'm not big on that. You earn your trophies. So that's how my career started in New Bern, and I really think those kids I had those first couple of years set the tone for the whole 20 years I was there. Towards the end in the 2000s, when I had some of my best wrestlers, I didn't have my best teams. Right. Because, you know, in the 2000s, commitment, just like today, commitment's hard for those kids to make. They don't want to do the thing. And back in the 80s and 90s, when Jamie was wrestling, we practiced New Year's Eve at 11:30. We practiced at 7 o'clock every Saturday morning. Nobody missed practice. You know, now my rules were tough. If you miss 3 days, I kick you off. And, you know, it didn't matter or not. You had 3 practices you could miss. And if you missed, you know, you missed 3 to 4th when you were gone. And they lived with it. I can't remember losing a kid because of practices, missing practice, except in the beginning of the year when kids are really deciding whether they really want to do it or not. And to go a little bit more on philosophy, so Great Bridge gave me my best. I've always been a competitor. I've always been loud. You know, I've always been a perfectionist, even though I wasn't perfect by any means. And then I went into the teacher's lounge one day. This was my first year there too, and there was just a little flyer in there for the psychology of winning.
Okay.
Well, all it had to do with coaching. And it was a 90-day free trial. Magic word, free. So I ordered those cassette tapes and got them and incorporated it into my wrestling practice. I would listen to them about 20 minutes, a couple of days a week. And you find out real quick, you know, it's the 10 things to make a winner, but it didn't have to do with coaching. It had life. And I think those probably push me more over the edge into seeing what it really takes to be successful. You know, you have to believe, you have to work, you have to commit yourself. And that's what I did with the kids. You have to set goals and you have to see them every day. And then they stay important. If you forget them, they go away. And so that psychology of winning was probably as big an eye-opener for winning and teaching kids as anything I ever did. And I do know Jamie said we used to have subliminal films that we showed. I absolutely did. If it would give me a half an inch over my competitor, I was going to spend the time to do it. And so, you know, I guess if there was any fault that I have, I didn't praise kids enough. You know, I always said that Jamie couldn't start for me until I could pronounce his last name. So, you know, Yazarski. And I think when you started, different things that I expected. And if you beat a kid you were supposed to be, I wouldn't jump in up and down, pat him back. That's your job. Now, if you're wrestling a real competitive kid and you beat him, absolutely. I was the first one there. Well, your job is to go out and wrestle every match as hard as you can wrestle. And there's certain times that you're going to get praise and certain times you aren't going to get praise. And I've praised kids that have wrestled great matches that didn't win, because it's not about winning. It's about how you perform and how you push yourself and the things that you do to try to win. Winning will take care of itself,
right,
if all those other factors are there.
Right. No, that's for sure. And I'm sure those kids, you know, going back to the story of walking in on their hands, right? They right at first didn't believe they could do it, right? And then they did it, and it's like, well, I can, you know. And so they not only had belief in themselves, they had belief in you, and then that kind of kicked off that start. I'm interested to hear more about, you know, Eastern Carolina. You know, you mentioned how you practiced in high school, right, with just kind of some, you know, warm up and things like that, and you throw a guy down, not much technique. What was wrestling like in the, you know, late 60s at the college level?
Well, it was Fortunately, I had a coach named John Welborn,
Okay.
who was a multi-time state champion out of Boone High School.
Okay.
He went in the Army. He went to Appalachian, wrestled at Appalachian, and then he went in the Army and wrestled in the Army. He came out of the Army and went and coached up in New York. And the thing about Coach Welborn, he's 82 now. And the thing about him was he loved wrestling. He was a great recruiter. I think it was 1975 or 76. East Carolina was ranked 18th in the nation.
Oh wow!
He didn't have a bunch of scholarships. You know, I went in and wrestled there my first year. I couldn't beat the manager. And then that year he got in a kid that was a junior college national champion, Mike Spoon from New York. He got in a kid named Bob Bosberg, who was a New York state champion. And he got in a kid named Steve Morgan, who was wrestling at Unica then and transferred to East Carolina. Those kids kill everybody in the room. But he could just get good kids. And then the way our practices went, they were pretty grueling. But what he did was he took these kids that came in and he'd say, show us your favorite takedown. Mm-hmm. And he would show it. And then we would work on it. And if we liked it, if it suited us, then, you know, it became ours after drill. So we had an area drill that was kind of structured. And then we did a lot of wrestling. And, you know, and that was our practice. And then we conditioned a lot in the end. And so when I got out and coached, like I said, he would pick the guys to show the stuff and then we show it. So that was kind of how we got our wrestling. And so when I got out and coached, I taught the things at Jacksonville and at East Carter both that I had, you know, learned in college or learned at clinics that I'd seen, but no central focus where everything came off of it. No real strict guided practice. And I'll tell you how I practiced at Newbern in just a second. And so that's how it was. And heavyweights did one thing, you know, they did other things. And then after I got into Granby's system, I went, you know, and I saw how important it is to plan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And right. I believe that. And so tip practice for me at Newbern, I didn't believe in a lot of warm-ups. I think if you're drilling, you're warming up. You're going through those wrestling moves. So rather than me saying, Jamie's diehard believer in warming up, stretching, and all that. But I'd rather spend 15 minutes doing inside step sweeps and front headlock than I would 15 minutes of stretching because we ain't in a stretching contest. It's kind of like running. A lot of coaches run their kids for 30, 40 minutes, but that's not wrestling. You know, there's a whole lot of difference in 6 minutes of wrestling and 6 minutes of running. And my concentration was on drill and combat. So my practices would start out with a few individual drills on penetration, lowering your level, you know, defensive stuff. And then we go right into setups. Like we would do, called a flat hand hook or Russian or underhook or Steiner tie. We didn't have then. Most valves were collar ties, Russian, hook post, flat hand hook, same thing. And we would do it. And I would do by the rows. You know, I'd have couples and I'd say I'd have 5, 10 in a row. And I'd go to row one. All right, everybody knew what it was going to be. It was going to be a flat hand hook, inside step, claw lift. So you claw lift, you put them in a Turk is the way you finish it. And I go row one, row two, row three, come back, The guys had to be ready. Row 1, row 2, row 3. And I would do that until everybody did 3. And then I'd do 1 minute as fast as we can. Not live, just as fast as you can, drills. So that was my warm-up. And we did about probably 20 minutes standing. And then we would do probably 20, 25 minutes on bottom. Because I was there in New Bern, head coach for years, and I never drilled a switch, not one time. It was all shrugs, not Granbys. Granbys to me were slow, but the shrug was where you go head. On a Granby, your arms is the body. On a shrug, your arms on the same side. It's like a summer. It's like a carpet arms, really.
Mm-hmm.
And we would play that over and over and over. And like 25 minutes on top, we'd probably go 15 minutes. And my philosophy was I wanted a first takedown. If I felt like if we get the first takedown, we were 3 points ahead. And then we work from there on bottom. My philosophy was go for 5, take 2 or take 1, but always looking for 5. Even if I stand up, I was looking for 5. I was looking for a roll out of the stand up. I was looking for something to put them on their back. On top, we had certain pinning combinations that we worked on. We did a Ratman ride, Turks, cradles. But probably the smartest thing I ever did was putting in the Mills half series. Mm-hmm. We pinned so many kids for that, out of the spiral ride. Most people teach that spiral ride where you go down that inside elbow, you take that wrist, press on the back, and work your series out of that. But Gene series, those smart guys know if they go to that elbow, what's going to happen. So they would go to the far elbow. And when that far elbow hit the mat, we had that far wrist, and then you had your pins at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, pull them across the knee. It was a great, great series for us. And also your crossface series was really good for us. And our practices lasted, after the first 3 weeks, I cut them down to 2 hours, but it was always 2 hours. I always practiced after matches. I never played Frisbee golf or didn't play any games. We practiced. It was intense. That's what I wanted. And then sometimes we did tag team, for fun. But in wrestling season, it was going to be wrestling. Right. I won't want to do nothing but wrestling. Right. And so that's kind of where I got.
Gotcha. So you bring up
so many stories.
Yeah. You brought up Coach Martin, and kind of that's when it kind of clicked for you, right? You kind of had you knew wrestling, right? But when you seen their program, it kind of clicked for you and it gave you a philosophy of the base, right? The base of the tree. You have any stories from that system, or any stories just from being there?
Let me tell you that it's funny. It seemed like all my state champions had stories. Mm. But my first state champion in Jacksonville, that was in 1971. In the semifinals, he's on top and he hooks that guy's leg, and that guy mule kicked out. Needless to say, where he kicked him. He made it through the match, real close match. And after it's over, he comes over and says, "Coach, man, he kicked me." So I said, "Well, all right, going in the locker room, we'll see what's happening." Right. And I go in there, and he was already swollen up the size of a grapefruit. And I said, "Man," at that time, they didn't have trainers, but they had a doctor at the thing. So I went and asked him what to do. He said, "Man, the only thing you can do is ice them." So I got a bag of ice. We go in there. Ralph laid up there put his feet up on the bench and iced them down for about 2 hours, I reckon. And after that, I said, "How's the pain?" He said, "It's not bad." He said, "It'll be okay." Well, we went on home went to bed, got up the next morning. He's in the finals of the state. I go in his room, and now, not soccer ball size, but I'm telling you, much bigger than a grapefruit.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, how in the world can this kid wrestle? And I said, Ralph, you sure you want to wrestle? I mean, this is for the state championship. You sure you want to wrestle? He said, Coach, I'm wrestling. And he said, I guarantee you, I'm not going to get kicked out of this match. Well, he took the guy down about 4 times with an ankle pick and won the match, never rode him, let him go because he was going to take him down. And that's how I won my first state championship. That was the first story. That's a pretty good story. So then my first state champion in Newbern, name was Doug Banks, little blonde head. He looked like a surfer kid.
Okay.
He looked like he'd be running women instead of being on a wrestling mat. But anyway, he comes over to my house his second Christmas. I was working on an old sailboat I had in the garage, and he came over and he said, can I come in a minute? I said, sure. He said, I got a story to tell you. I said, okay, come on out in the garage. I'm working on my boat. You can help me. I'll go out in the garage, and he says, Coach, last night I had a dream. And he said, I dreamed I was wrestling in the state championship. And he said, this guy was wearing a shiny white uniform. And he said, so I knew it was a dream. I said, well, did you win? He said, yeah, I won. I said, well, I want you to have that dream until we get to the state championship. So we go to the state. He wins the first match, wins the second match, in the semifinals. So he's in the finals. And he's wrestling a kid from Jordan High School. Their colors are blue, red, white. And so he's warming up, and I'm facing him. He's warming up, standing in front of the chair. Last one, I took his arm loose, and I said, you can do this just like every other match. Go out there and focus. Do stuff. Don't worry about what he has. And he says, Coach, turn around. I turn around. Jordan, the coach, had bought them new uniforms for the state championship. That was when that Lycra uniform first came out. White Lycra with a little J on the leg. I almost fell down. I said, golly, Dave, man, just like the dream you had. You told me about in December. And he said, yeah. I said, well, just go out and do the same thing you did in the dream. So that was one. Pretty amazing. But the thing was, he believed, the whole year. And he just happened to be there. It didn't matter. Then my next one was a kid named Robert Potter, who had been in about 8 or 9 foster homes. I was supposed to have been adopted, and they went in.
What was his name? You're cutting out there. What was his name?
In the meeting, Robert Potter.
Okay, Potter. Okay.
Was his name. And anyway, he ended up in Newbern because the people walked down on the adoption. Another foster parent that came to Newbern. Tough kid. But anyway, he was best in the state 3 years, but he didn't believe it. Mm-hmm. And his senior year, though, he wrestled through, and I wrestled him everywhere from 70 to heavyweight. He was physically able to do that. And so we go to the state, and he wins the semifinals, and he's in the finals with a kid from Olympia High School that looks like he sculpted it out of granite. I mean, the biggest 170-pounder I have ever seen in my life. And he had pinned everybody he wrestled. So I said, man, we could be in trouble. I said, Robert, let's just go out there and do your thing. You've done it all year. You wrestled heavyweights, the bigger than him. And he goes out there, and Robert got taken down 3 times in the first period. So he was down 6-2 going into the second period. And I'm thinking, man, I just hope he doesn't revert back. because when you quit believing, good things quit happening.
Right.
And so he goes out there, and that guy takes down, and Robert gets on top. They wrestle around and go out of bounds right in front of me. I said, settle down, man. You got this. Just do what you do. And he looked up and winked at me. And I'm saying, oh, my gosh, what is this? So he goes back out there, get in the referee's position. Referee blows the whistle. He chopped that guy's arm, took the wrist, jumped to the far side, shot a half, and stuck him in about 30 seconds. Wins the state championship. And I told him later, I said, man, you were that good as a sophomore, but you didn't believe it. This year, you believed it. If that guy had done that to you as a junior, you'd have folded. So I thought that's a pretty good story. And then the next one was a kid I had as a freshman. His name is Gene Chapman. He wrestled 135 for me. And he didn't win but 5 matches as a freshman. But he worked with me that summer. And this is a negative story at the end, but I think it's good. I hope a lot of people listen to this. But anyway, so he worked for me that summer. Well, I listened to the Psychology of Winning on my audio tape wherever I went. And I refinished wrestling match. And so Gene went with me, and I'm sure he'd rather been listening to something else. He didn't have a choice. He was listening to what I was listening to. So all summer, he got bombarded with the Psychology of Winning. So we come back. He's a sophomore. And our wrestling room, and then you walk through the shower room to get to the locker room. And so we get through practice, and every day Gene was in the shower room taking a shower, saying, I'm going to be a state champion. I'm going to be a state champion. I'm going to be a state champion. Everywhere he went. The kids on the team were kidding him because he couldn't beat any of them. Got closer and closer and closer as the year went. But anyway, so we go up and wrestle East Carteret High School, and not East Carteret, Eastern Wayne High School. And the match before Gene wrestled, the guy from New Bern got pinned. And the guy from the Eastern Wayne that pinned him got up on his hands and walked around the mat and slapped his chest in between, everything. I don't like that. I want you to act like you've been there.
Right.
So anyway, Gene goes out there and wrestles the kid and pinned the kid in the first period. And as soon as he shook his hand, he did a backflip. Well, his feet didn't hit the mat again until he reached the chairs, because we were having a heated discussion about, acting like you've been there.
Right.
And show your class, not your ass things. So I get him in the chair. So we get through the match and get on the bus. We're heading home. Gene comes up and said, Coach, man, he said, how about if we win the state championship? I said, what are you talking about? He said, can I turn a backflip if I win the state championship? I said, Gene, if you win the state championship, you can turn 2 backflips. Okay. That was it. It was over with. So he wrestles on through the year, and he had lost probably only 4 or 5 where the year before he'd only won 5.
Right.
And he goes to the regional tournament, and he wrestled the number 1 guy in the second round and kills him. And so he won the region, and we go on to the state. And I'm talking to my assistant coach then, and I said, man, this is just unbelievable. I said, we got a sophomore at state. I said, this is going to be a great experience for him to lead him in the next year. And so, he wins the first match. We said, unbelievable. Behind in the match, came back and wins it. I said, great, man. He's won a match. That's even better. Well, he won the second one, too. And he won the semifinals. And so now he's wrestling in the finals with this kid from Cary that was the most outstanding wrestler the year before. And, we know Christmas is over now. And so, we talked to Gene, about being positive and go out there and doing the right things. My brother-in-law bought him a pair of socks with a red NB on the side of them. Meant New Balance, but my brother-in-law, not my brother, my brother-in-law told him that they were actually special socks he had made for him for New Bern instead of New Balance. So anyway, Gene was set for the final. And he goes out there and kills this kid from Cary. Probably beats him 6 or 7 points.
Wow.
And shake hands with what did he do? 2 backflips. That's what he had dreamed of from that third match we had all the way through the state championship. And that's why I say, you can't say that believing, and having goals that you look at every day don't make a tremendous difference.
Right.
And the sad part on Gene was he had lived with a lot of foster parents too, and that between his sophomore year, at the end of the year, and instead of working with me, came to me and said he was going to work for his cousins. His cousins were drug dealers, and Gene, he said, "I'm not going to get involved in it. I'm working for them. They're going to give me a car." I said, "Well, you lay down dogs, you get fleas." And he came back the next year, was third in the state, but got more and more involved in it. His junior year, that was his junior year, last day of school, he comes to school with a .44 Magnum in his book bag. No bullets in it, but the .44 Magnum. He completely lost sight of his goals. He was drunk. Of course, they expelled him from school, got him in a rehab program in Greenville. The court that for him, so they wouldn't not allow him to go to school. Then the school system making so I fight the principal, the superintendent of the Board of Education, over with him and let him back in school. And he wrestled well here. He was 2 weight classes up, but it wasn't the same Gene. He didn't have the same goals. And so he was going to go to Pembroke. Before that, he could have gone anywhere. Super great, smart kid. And all he had to do was show up at the beginning of Pembroke School, and he had been. And I get a call about a week before he's supposed to go. And he said, "Coach, I need help." I said, "What's up?" He said, "I'm in jail in Alexandria, Virginia." I said, "What's up?" And he said, "My cousin and I got busted carrying drugs across the state line." And I said, "Man, I can't help you." And so since that time, that was 89, he's been in and out of jail continually. He's out now and seems to be doing real good. I talked to him not long ago because I still love the kid. You can't put that much time in them and not love them. Right. You just can't deal with what they do. And so all of that talent gone. I've used that story 1,000 times talking to troubled kids because it's all a matter of how you take things. Nobody, it's not a rose garden regardless of who you are. But you've got to take the situation you got and make something of it.
Well, thanks for sharing some
I'll
of your.
Tell you somebody else.
Recruiting-accelerator.com.
That's correct. Recruiting-accelerator.com. When you go to store, you can check out and enter the code Wrestling Philosophy for $100 off.
Thank you, Coach.